Hi, I'm Rick Reef. Welcome to SoCal Insider. Well, Californians want affordable energy, but they also like ball fields and open space. In Anaheim, those wants are clashing. David Nazar reports on a battle over a proposed power plant and a deadly shooting spree, political corruption, a heated and costly LA mayor's race. We'll recap the year here in the Southland and make some predictions for 2014. But first, the federal probe of assaults on inmates and corruption in the LA County Jail. 18 former and current deputies and supervisors have been arrested, charged with beating inmates and obstructing an FBI investigation. Are more charges on the way, and how high up the chain of command will investigators go? Joining me to discuss, a former sheriff's commander who blew the whistle on wrongdoing in the department and is now running for sheriff, Bob Olmsted. Bob, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So we've got these revelations, the ACLU and the LA Times doing a lot of work on this and bringing to light the fact that you had these, you had deputies in the jail abusing, beating inmates, and the thing being covered up. Is that what this is all about?
You hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what it is, and it's disgusting that we even have to get this far. None of this needed to have occurred. All this stuff is preventable. And the sad part is when you run it up the chain of command like I did and everyone turned a blind eye to it, I unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, had to go outside the organization and report it to the FBI.
Yeah, and we're going to get into that, but just for folks that haven't been following it, what are some of the most egregious things? I mean, how bad were these beatings? How did they go on? That kind of thing.
When I looked into it, the most egregious is when deputies were beating inmates purposely to belong to part of this rogue gang that worked at Men's Central Jail. And you were able to receive a tattoo once you broke somebody's bone.
So the deputies had their own gang?
Yes. Yes.
Had colors and all that?
They had their insignias. They would flash signs the same way. And once you were part of that particular group, and then they can trust you, and you broke a bone, then you were allowed to get a tattoo that was only indicative of those particular group of people.
Roughly how long did this go on, and how could it have been hit, or how was it hidden?
When I worked at jail, I was able to lower force at Men's Central Jail by 25%, and the stats are out there.
So you were the supervisor then at some point?
At one time, I was a supervisor at Men's Central Jail and actually lowered the force. When I got promoted and they brought in another supervisor, that particular captain was the one who allowed this to perpetuate. So it probably went on for at least a year before we really got our hands around it and found out exactly what some of the problems were.
Okay, now just for people out there, because it's kind of hard to understand, you're put in charge and you know this is going on. You say you lowered it, and granted nobody else lowered it, but why didn't you just wipe it out? Why didn't you just fire all these guys and just, you know, get them all out of there?
Well, let me preface by saying I was the captain of Men's Central Jail when we were able to lower the force. I then got promoted for doing such a good job. Then when I got promoted, now I'm covering several different jails at one particular time, a new rogue captain came in and allowed this type of negative activity to occur. That being said, I identified the problem. That was strictly leadership. That captain needed to be moved, and no one would move him. I went all the way up to the sheriff, the assistant sheriffs, my boss, and they said, well, we're not going to do it. Matter of fact, we're going to promote him. And I said, this is atrocious, this is unacceptable. Play this backwards. Several lawsuits on this have occurred where punitive damages have been assessed against this particular captain on several federal court cases. That being said, the writing was on the wall. Nobody wanted to do anything. Okay. I put this at the feet of Baca.
And then at one point, you went all the way up, nothing's being done. Is that when you decided, I'm going public with this?
I had to. It was a duty. You raise your hand, you take an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States, the state Constitution, and when Lee Baca failed to listen to me, when Paul Tanaka failed to listen, and knowing that this is still going to continue, I had a responsibility to report it.
So far, there's been some supervisors charged in addition to deputies. You're mentioning Lee Baca, who is the sheriff, Paul Tanaka, his former right-hand man. Does this go all the way up?
Yes, it does. And Paul Tanaka has already come out and said that I was ordered by Lee Baca to go ahead and encourage this obstruction of justice with the FBI.
Is there more that's going to happen in this investigation?
It has to. If you read the writing on the wall, all they went after were the pawns, and that's just a typical ploy. Being an investigator myself, that's what you do. You work the pawns, it then works its way up to the top, and my guess is it'll probably go right to the top.
Are you saying that you think there's going to be charges against the sheriff?
That I don't know for sure. I'm not privy to the investigations, but I do know that the FBI is still investigating, and there's indication that it's going to go much higher with in the organization.
Now, you know, Baca himself, when these things have come out, you know, essentially I think has said he you know, didn't know about it, and that he's called in, you know, he's had investigations going on to get to the bottom of it. You look a little skeptical. You
know how many times I've heard that in the media for the last year? I didn't know. Nobody told me. I wasn't informed. You know, Truman once said the buck stops here. At some point, when you can only say this so much until all of a sudden it's going to bite you in the rear. That being said, is if you're responsible, you need to be responsible. You need to own up to the problems, not pointing fingers at somebody else. You're running the shop. You take control.
Okay. Now, just to play devil's advocate a little, because you are running for sheriff now. Sure. So somebody will say, well, you're painting this as bad as you can paint it because you want to be elected sheriff. Baca, did he not at one point offer you, like he wanted you to come back out of retirement? Please come back and fix this, and you said no. How come? It's
because the same infrastructure that caused the problem was still in place. For me to come back into the organization and have the same executive level management still trying to run the organization when I went through the chain of command on several levels to try and identify the problems, it would have been a moot issue. I did it when I was on the department. You can't come back off the department with no teeth or no authority as a part-timer to go ahead and try and change something you tried to do when you were a full-time person.
One of the things you did in coming out on this is you broke the code of silence, right?
Absolutely.
And what's been the ramifications of that?
I'm proud. I'm glad I did. It's the right thing to do. Some people take this connotation as being negative, but if you look it up in the dictionary, it's somebody that reports corruption and illegal activities. And isn't this what we want from the men and women of the LA County Sheriff's Department? Isn't this what the public trust is all about and the citizens want, is to report that? I will tell you, one of the other people running for a sheriff right now, Paul Tanaka, has already come out and said, I wasn't raised to be a whistleblower. Well, he ran the organization. Now he's saying maintain the code of silence.
Is that his little dig? Because he's running too, right?
Yes.
He's running for sheriff, and so that's his dig at you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But the message is, walk lockstep behind me. Unacceptable.
Okay. One other thing, though, in all of this, does the public care? Because after all, doesn't the public feel it's a tough job? It's a tough job being in the jail, and you are dealing with some really bad guys, bad gang members and
Absolutely.
Stuff. And so if they get roughed up, what's the big deal?
You know, not everybody goes to jail is guilty. You're innocent until proven guilty by our standards. And on top of all this, all the lawsuits that have been generated in the last 3 years is $100 million in lawsuits with attorney fees. Add to the fact that if this is a learned environment, that the deputies, the rogue deputies, not the good ones, but the rogue deputies do this as a learned environment, they then go out to the public and treat the public the exact same way. The public cares. I'll guarantee you they care. And they're looking for new leadership.
Okay, Bob, thanks so much for coming on, and I have a feeling we'll be talking to you again.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you. A lot of folks in Anaheim want to pull the plug on a proposed power plant near Honda Center in the Big A. David Nazar, what's the story?
Rick, it was a close vote, 6-4. The Orange County Water District Board has decided to lease land it owns in Anaheim for a natural gas power plant. The district claims the rent it collects will help control water rates, and the electricity that's generated will go to the state's power grid and help to make up a little of the energy lost from the San Onofre shutdown. However, many Anaheim residents, businesses, and activists are having none of it. This 20-acre parcel in Anaheim along the Santa Ana River is known as the Ball Road Basin, and to a Maryland company called Competitive Power Ventures, it's more valuable than beachfront property. The electric company has entered into a lease agreement for the land with the Orange County Water District. OCWD's Sean DeWayne explains.
CPV is putting up money initially to secure or have site control. That's an upfront series of upfront payments. If they're successful with their proposal at the California Energy Commission, it will generate a lease payment to the district to the tune of about $44 million over about a 30-year period.
What do you do with that money?
The money that the district will receive will help to offset or mitigate the operating costs of this district, directly benefiting the 2.4 million people that live and drink water in our service area.
I can certainly understand why a project like this would be of great value to the water district. I suppose I question whether or not it's a great thing for Anaheim.
Terry Lowe is with the City of Anaheim. Lowe says this lot should be used for sports fields and open space.
This particular project as we see it, would not benefit our city. We would not get our power from this power plant. What we would have in this incredible piece of open space, we would have a very large commercial power plant. We believe there's a higher and better use for that land in our city that would be of greater benefit to our residents.
The neighborhood isn't happy about it. I'm not happy about it. The city's not happy about it. Our sports and entertainment groups are not happy about it, and certainly our businesses are not happy about it.
Fessel says it's more than just a power plant versus a sports park. He says many neighbors are concerned about environmental impacts.
I've served on the Public Utilities Board here in Anaheim for several years. Power plants are not benign. I helped design a few of them. This is not a benign facility. Is there emissions? Certainly. Sound. We have basically 4 747 jet engines that will be running here. This is not a location for a power facility.
Dwayne says it's the perfect location for a power plant, with comparable facilities all over the Southland in places like Los Angeles, Burbank, Glendale, and even other parts of Anaheim.
I've been assured by every scientific study, engineer. I've spoken with a lot of the folks regarding these types of plants. In fact, I went to San Diego recently and visited the manufacturing company in California that makes industrial turbines like this, and was assured that this project will have the highest application of science and technology to mitigate those things.
Now, Rick, I did speak to the folks over at Competitive Power Ventures, a company in Maryland. The senior vice president there tells me that the proposed Orange County Energy Park, as they're calling it, is going to really help meet the region's increased power demands and reliability concerns, not only due to the closure of San Onofre, but also because of the scheduled retirement of a number of old and efficient power plants throughout Southern California. The company says a power plant must pass through one of the most rigorous permitting processes in the country, if not the world, they say. Of course, overseen by the California Energy Commission. And finally, Rick, the senior VP there, tells me there are going to be plenty of opportunities for public participation as this project goes forward.
David, I have to note a couple ironies. They're calling it an energy park. I'm not sure that's the kind of park the Anaheim residents have in mind. And also, Anaheim has its own utilities. So this power that's being generated goes right into the state grid for all of California, or at least Southern California, and it's not really going to be a direct benefit energy-wise to the city of Anaheim. But is the park, or not the park, is the water district just really trying to ram this thing down Anaheim's throat? I got to believe they're talking to the city. They're not just doing this willy-nilly, are they?
Well, they were talking to the city one time. City officials are concerned that they feel sort of out of the loop right now. Of course, the water district has something like a $250 million a year budget, and they're saying this $44 million they're going to make over the years is going to greatly help them. But again, I was wondering why I wasn't getting some high-ranking Anaheim officials to talk in this story, and I believe the word I've gotten is that they don't want this to be a done deal, or they believe that maybe they can stop this thing. It seems to me this is going forward. But by the way, when you did mention the park, the power company is saying that it's not going to be just a power plant. They're going to devote part of that property to a sports field or sports fields, or that's what they're telling me anyway.
Yeah, I don't know how you compromise a power plant, but maybe that'll be the deal. You know, we'll build a power plant on part of it. We'll give you some soccer fields and things. We'll pay for it. City doesn't have to worry. I think they might be able to work something out. But, you know, I mean, we do have a really serious energy situation, especially with San Onofre closing. We've got to put plants somewhere. I have a feeling we're going to see more of these kind of conflicts as time goes on, because we're going to have to site plants somewhere to make up for the energy that we've lost.
Yeah,
okay,
you're probably
anyway,
right.
Thanks, David. And now, the big stories of the year and a couple of predictions for the new year. Joining me out of Los Angeles, GOP political consultant John Thomas and feature story news reporter Lindsey Mastis. John, Lindsey, good to have both of you on.
Good to be with you.
Yeah, so John, I just did that interview with the sheriff. Certainly corruption is the word there. There's been a lot of that. In fact, I think you might even say corruption was one of the big stories this year.
Yeah, I mean, that's unfortunately one of the big themes coming out of Los Angeles County in particular. And looking at that sheriff, the sheriff's office, I mean, undoubtedly, whether the sheriff himself is corrupt or not, I mean, his department is branded with that corruption. And I think that's going to affect him all the way to the ballot box.
Yeah, he's been such a popular sheriff until now at the ballot box. Do you think, A, is he going to run? And B, if he does, is he in trouble?
Well, I think there's two ways to look at that. One, it's possible that he strikes a deal with the FBI to bow out of the race in exchange for having charges levied against him. That's just speculation, but that's possible. But I think think Sheriff Lee Baca has been in power for so long that he will go the distance. He will run, because as of yet, no real serious big name challengers have entered the race. And quite frankly, until that happens, Lee Baca will probably continue on.
Just very quickly, year in review, what were the other big corruption stories?
Sure, obviously the city of Bell, right? How can we not talk about Robert Rizzo and embezzlement and things like that? You know, that's a big one, and the DA's office has taken action on that.
Well, he had the plea, he pled, and his right-hand person was convicted.
Of course. And then the Calderon scandal. How can we not talk about that? Yeah. And that, I think, we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg.
Who is Calderon?
So Calderon was a state senator, head of the Latino caucus in Sacramento, and one of the things he was found, his office was raided by the FBI a few months ago, and basically what the FBI found was that he was using the Latino caucus and his influence with votes and vendors to create these nonprofit structures to then pay his living costs, which is illegal. You can't do that, essentially launder money. And so we think he's going down, but you know, I'm seeing in races now.
Again, it's alleged right now.
Allegedly. But I'm seeing other races I'm involved in where we're seeing the tentacles of the Calderon scandal, and the practices that Calderon is using is just the tip of the iceberg. So I think that's going to be the corruption scandal that keeps giving into 2014.
Lindsey, another big, maybe there's certainly the most spectacular story of the year was the Chris Dorner manhunt. Shootings were a big story this year.
Yeah, unfortunately, Los Angeles has definitely seen its fair share of that type of violence. I mean, we had the Dorner case, we also had the LAX shooting, and of course, who could forget the Santa Monica College shooting. Now, if we start with the Dorner case, this is one that made, you know, national headlines. It's not just something that, you know, affected LA, it affected the greater Los Angeles area, and it was something that the country was looking at. And unfortunately, it was such a tragedy what was happening, but on top of that, there were mistakes that were made that are having some effects throughout the year and probably into next year as well.
It wasn't the LAPD's finest moment.
Not at all. Not at all. And on a lot of different fronts. I mean, you had cops that were, you know, in hysteria practically, shooting at innocent people.
Well, I mean, not just, I mean, because they thought there were two women delivering the LA Times, right? Had their car shot up.
They're delivering, you know, they were in a pickup truck.
And the city settled, right? I mean,
well, that's the other thing, you know, LAPD, mistakes were made, but on top of that, you had a reward of $1 million that was not so clear on who could receive it, that a judge had to step in. And then on top of that, you had this whole LAPD trying to replace the pickup truck that was shot up by giving them these two ladies a new pickup truck. That didn't happen, and eventually the city had to pay out over $4 million. So, you know, there are things.
How about at LAX? What's the, so there, I think the police, hopefully the departments learned a few lessons from how they responded to Dorner. What about LAX? What's the thought about how that was handled?
Yeah, so that was handled, I think, in the best way that it could be handled, and that's of course the consensus among people who study this type of thing. Not everything, of course. You still had some response times that were of issue, but when you're talking about what can you do at an airport like LAX to prevent something like this happening, and possibly maybe it's just not preventable, and that's what a lot of people are coming to the conclusion of. You know, without completely locking it down and having everyone searched before they even get in close proximity of the airport, what can you do? Now, one thing that's come of this is that there's been a dialogue about arming every TSA officer, but there's also concerns about whether that's just going way overboard. You've already got people in the airport that are armed and that should be responding. Not everyone should be carrying a gun who's in uniform.
Is it just, John, we've got some crazy people in this society, and we've got millions of guns out there, and these things aren't going to go away?
I mean, I don't see them going away anytime soon. Obviously, we're going to try to be as vigilant as we can as a society. But even, you know, if you take more guns from the streets, guns will still be out there. It is a fundamental constitutional right, and the bad people, unfortunately, will obtain them. So,
and obtain them in a way that maybe you and I don't think about, not just getting a gun, but taking pieces from other guns and putting them together to create a gun.
A great example is the 3D printers are now TSA outlawed. You you from printing your own plastic gun and taking through into the airport. I mean, who would have thought that you can print a gun and bring it through an airport?
I think somebody who prints a gun and tries to take it through an airport, you've got to have your head examined right there. You're a threat. You know, I mean, you're just crazy to begin with. Okay, all right. I have invited each of you to give me a prediction or two for the coming year. I don't know what they are because I wanted to be surprised. Lindsey, you go first. Give me a prediction for the new year.
Sure. Well, I think we need to talk about Snapchat. You know, we're talking about digital and social networks, and Snapchat is based in Venice Beach, and it is an app that self-destructs. I mean, think about the Mission Impossible movies. This tape is going to self-destruct in 5 seconds. After you look at something that's been sent to you, it's gone.
What kind of a thing might a person send on Snapchat?
Well, you know, it's getting a lot of headlines because people are saying that you've heard the term sexting.
Yes.
Maybe there's some images that are coming through that you don't want someone to hold on to, but you want to.
Brett Favre might have liked that at some point, right? Or Anthony Weiner might have liked that. You know, it's gone, right?
Yeah,
but when we're talking about this, you know.
All right. So this is where are they based?
They're based in Venice Beach.
Okay. So they're part of the whole
Silicon Beach. You know, and what's interesting about this is people are tired of having the past come back to bite them, especially young people who know they're going to be making mistakes on social networking, and they don't want that to prevent them from having a job. I think Snapchat is something we're going to be hearing about, and it's ad-free. It doesn't mean they're making money, but it also means that young people are more likely to use it because they don't have to worry about getting sold.
Okay, and while we're talking about Silicon Beach and these hot companies, another one in Silicon Beach, DocStock, which we're plugging because it happens to be run by Jason Nazar, the brother of our own David Nazar. He just sold the company to Intuit for $40 million. Unfortunately for David, he was not one of the early investors in his brother's company. Otherwise, he'd be sitting here in my place right now. But anyway, Silicon Beach getting some buzz. So let's watch these tech companies in the coming year. All right, John, you give me a prediction.
I've got a couple. One is, you know, looking at the sheriff's department, I think there are going to be more indictments coming out of that department in 2014. They got the low-hanging fruit now. We think they're going to flip them and go right up the chain. Does it go all the way to Lee Baca? I'm not sure, but I think it may go up to the undersheriff. So that's something to look out for. I also like to predict, I think Jerry Brown's going to become reelected. He'll be the next governor again in a walk, and I think Kamala Harris will get the same pass. Do
you predict, I just saw there's a story in the LA Times, Brown's supporters, some people say he's going to run for president. Do you think he'll do that?
You know, I read that article, and the only thing that interests me in that piece was that he does have a hatred for the Clintons. So he might run out of spite. And one thing about Jerry Brown is he is not predictable. So I wouldn't rule it out completely, but
you wouldn't bet money on that.
I don't know if I would.
Now let me make a prediction for the new year that we are going to see more cities filing bankruptcy. We're going to see others following San Bernardino. But given that ruling, a big ruling by a federal bankruptcy judge in Detroit that basically said in Detroit the public employees do not have any more claim than any other creditor, I think now public employee unions will get serious. They're going to start sitting down with cities and working through some of these things. I think we're going to see more cooperation because everybody's terrified of what's going to happen if judges rule on these things with finality. Could also go to the Supreme Court.
Right, could.
Great, so I get the last word. Thank you for these outlooks and reviews of the year.
My pleasure.
Thanks to you.
Thank you.
You can watch this show and past shows at rickreef.com. Segments of the show can also be viewed at pbssocal.org. My guests have been Bob Olmsted, John Thomas, and Lindsey Mastis. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again on SoCal Insider.
SoCal Insider with Rick Reef is brought to you by the following. 5 Point Communities is a proud sponsor of PBS SoCal. 5 Point Communities is an independent real estate development company with assets under management across California. More information available at www.fivepointcommunities.com. Snell & Wilmer is a full-service business law firm with more than 400 attorneys in Orange County, Los Angeles, and throughout the West. On the web at swlaw.com. Snell & Wilmer. Straight talk, sound counsel. Practical solutions.
Relief Pod's latest generation of safety kits now go everywhere you go. Relief Pod's organized, color-coded, and compact safety kits keep first aid and emergency items accessible for a safe lifestyle every day. Relief Pod. Live ready.
A healthy future for you, your family, and your business is why Memorial Care Health System transformed healthcare. Our hospitals, physicians, and outpatient centers keep patients healthy and care for them when they're not. Memorial Care, one healthcare system leading the way.
Stem cells are showing great promise for the treatment of disease and injury. At UC Irvine, innovations in stem cell research are rapidly moving potential therapies from the lab to the patient.